So welcome to tonight's class. As Shavuos is coming up, holiday of the giving of the Torah, and the time when Hashem spoke the Ten Commandments, we'll focus on a specific aspect of the Seres HaDibros, the Ten Commandments, and the differences that we find in the different times when the Ten Commandments are recorded in the Torah. So we have in Parshas, in the first time that when the Ten Commandments are actually spoken, in Parshas Yisro, is when they were spoken for the first time at Mount Sinai. That's when it happened, and of course there Hashem is speaking to the Jewish people directly, and speaks the Seres HaDibros, speaks the Ten Commandments. After the first four books of the Torah, we have the final book of the Torah of Devarim, of Deuteronomy, which basically that's a repetition. Moses is then speaking again, is reviewing the events of the past decades as the Jewish people are getting ready to enter into the land of Israel. And there Moses again recounts the Ten Commandments, the story of the giving of the Torah and the Ten Commandments as well. And as we'll see in the two times where the Ten Commandments are recorded in the Torah, each time there is slight differences. So of course the question is, which one is the correct version? If Hashem spoke it, he spoke one of them. How could there be differences in Parshas Yisro and again in Parshas Va'aschanan, the second portion of the book of Deuteronomy? So let's jump right into it, and let's look at, first we'll explore some of the differences that there are between the two portions, and then we'll delve into a little bit deeper how there can be differences and some of the lessons that we can learn from one of the major differences between the two texts. So let's look on the right side of the screen. Here is the text from Exodus, from when God spoke it the first time at the giving of the Torah in the portion of Yisro. If you look at the very first word, if you can read in the Hebrew, the very first word in the Hebrew side is zachor, remember. If you look on the left side of the screen, the first word is shamar, and this is remembering the day of Shabbos to keep it holy. The first time he uses the word remember. The second time he uses the word shamar. Shamar comes from the Hebrew word shomer. A shomer is a guard, someone that protects. That's why it's called being shomer Shabbat, to keep Shabbos, not to observe it. But the literal translation of the word shamar is not just to keep and observe, but it's to protect, to safeguard. Zachor, remembering, is remembering something that we should do, and shamar, to protect and to safeguard it and make sure it remains holy, is to refrain from doing work, to refrain from doing things that would desecrate Shabbos. So we have the positive mitzvah of remembering, which included in that is making kiddush on Friday night and havdalah at the end of Shabbos, the end of Shabbat, differentiating between the beginning and end of Shabbos. In fact, in the beginning of Shabbos and at the end of Shabbos, we always add a few minutes to the day of Shabbos, as we'll learn a little bit later on this evening, that we're always adding in Shabbos, both at the beginning and end, in order to elevate the mundane weekday and make it into a part of Shabbos, to make it extra holy as well, not just the day of the week of Shabbos, which happens on its own. Every seventh day is Shabbos, whether we do something or not. We also add a few minutes before and after Shabbos as well, to take from what would have been the regular week and make it into Shabbos. Let's look at we'll read the English side of on the right side of the screen. The text in Exodus from Yisro: remember the Shabbos day by keeping it holy. 6 days you shall work and complete all your labor, but the seventh day is a Shabbat to the Lord your God. On it you shall not do any work, neither you, nor your son or daughter, nor your male or female servant, nor your animals, nor any foreigner residing in your towns. Okay, let's go on to the left side, where from Deuteronomy, from Parshas Va'aschanan, where Moses recounts it the second time. Observe the Shabbos day by keeping it holy, as the Lord your God has commanded you. 6 days you shall work and complete all your labor, but the seventh day is a Shabbat to the Lord your God. On it you shall not do any work, neither you, nor your son or daughter, nor your male or female servant, nor your ox, your donkey, or any of your animals, nor any foreigner residing in your towns, so that your male and female servants may rest as you do. Now we'll look at the very ending of both of these commandments, the way that it's recorded, and we find a fascinating, seemingly very important difference between the two that's almost contrary to each other. They seem to contradict each other. In the text in Exodus, on the right side of the screen, we say, Hashem finishes off the commandment by saying, what is the reason for the day of Shabbos? For in 6 days God made the heavens and the earth, the sea and all that is in them. He rested on the seventh day. Therefore God blessed the seventh day and made it holy. So why are we observing Shabbos? Why are we observing the day of Shabbat, the day of rest? Because when Hashem created the world, He created the world in 6 days, and Hashem rested on the seventh day. So remembering that Hashem rested on the seventh day, we also rest on the seventh day, just as Hashem did, just as God did when He created the world. Whereas if we look in the text in Deuteronomy, in Parshas Veschanan, He tells us at the end of this commandment, remember that you were slaves in Egypt, and that the Lord your God brought you out of there with a mighty hand and an outstretched arm. Therefore, God has commanded you to observe the Sabbath day, to observe Shabbos. So the reason given the second time is not because Hashem created the world. The reason given the second time it records the Ten Commandments is to remember the exodus of Egypt. To remember where Hashem took us out of Egypt and told us that you're not slaves to anybody else. You're only slaves to me. Your only responsibility is to serve Hashem, and in order to remind us that our only responsibility is to serve Hashem and no one else, and this is why He took us out of Egypt, to give us the Torah and observe His commandments, refrain from doing any work, we should rely only on Hashem, and this is the reason for Shabbos. So not only are the texts different, but the reason why Hashem tells us that we should keep Shabbos is for two different reasons. First time is for commemorate the 6 days of the week that Hashem made and He rests on the seventh. And the second time is to commemorate the miracles that Hashem did for us when He took us out of Egypt and told us that we are only indebted to Him and not to anybody else. So it seems like a pretty big discrepancy between the two. Before we go on to look at the answer and what we can learn from this specific difference in Shabbos, we'll look at one more difference, and this is from the final one of the Ten Commandments. On the right side, first text in Exodus, you shall not covet your neighbor's house, you shall not covet your neighbor's wife, or his male or female servant, his ox or donkey, or anything that belongs to your neighbor. And in Hebrew, it's lo sachmod. He uses the words lo sachmod. You should not not desire your neighbor's things. You should not want to take them from your neighbor, and not to do any actions that would imply that you're trying to take that which belongs to your friend. The text of Deuteronomy adds in another word. Here he says, you shall not covet your neighbor's wife. You shall not set your desire on your neighbor's house or land, his male or female servant, his ox or donkey, or anything that belongs to your neighbor. And here in the Hebrew, the word is tisava. Not only should you not desire it in a way that you're going to implement any actions to take it from him, but you should not even want in your heart that which someone else has. And this has an implication as well into the halachic aspect of this commandment, not only doing something to get what you want, but also just the desire, being envious of what someone else has and wanting it, even if you don't do anything about it. Just the feeling in one's heart to have what someone else has, that they want to take it from them, that itself is part of this mitzvah, part of this commandment. But again, we see a discrepancy between the first time and second time that it was recorded in the Torah. The Ibn Ezra is one of those that asks this question, and he tells us that this chapter poses difficult questions. We first read the chapter of Yisro, and then the chapter of Veschanan, and we notice several differences in the commandments. The first text says, remember, regarding Shabbos, and the second says to observe, or to safeguard, to keep. The most difficult question of them all is that at first it gives the reason first it gives the creation in 6 days as the reason for Shabbat. Continuing, therefore God blessed the Shabbos, but these verses are not written the second time. Instead, a different reason is given. Remember that you were slaves in Egypt, concluding, therefore God has commanded you to observe the Shabbos day. The first version says, do not covet your neighbor's house, while the second says, do not set your desire on your neighbor's house. So again, it uses just reviews the differences, the most noteworthy of which is the reason for Shabbos. Now, on a very simple, basic level, how could it be that there are differences in the way that these verses are said? If Hashem spoke them, if God spoke them, He either spoke them one way or spoke them a different way. So first of all, hang on a second, someone else is joining. Let's just let them in. So first of all, the reason that there could be differences, the very first verse, and Rashi comments this as well, the first verse in the commandment regarding Shabbos of Zachar es Yom HaShabbos and Shamar, to keep the day of Shabbos holy or to observe it, safeguard it. Rashi tells us that it teaches us that when Hashem spoke the 10 Commandments, it was in such a miraculous way, in addition to all the other miracles described in the Torah, that there was tremendous sound, and there was thunder and lightning, and the mountain of Har Sinai, the Mount Sinai, middle of the desert, which was a deserted mountain, suddenly blossomed with beautiful grass and flowers and became a beautiful place. The word of Hashem, when He spoke the Asaras HaDibros, when He spoke the 10 Commandments, was a voice that permeated each and every corner of the world and got stronger and stronger as the voice moved forward. Most of us, when we speak, the further away we get from our voice, the harder it is to hear it. Whereas Hashem was speaking, it got louder and louder. There was no echo because there was nowhere for it to bounce off of. It entered into every single dimension of existence when Hashem spoke the 10 Commandments. Together with that, Rashi tells us that the words Zachar and Shamar were actually both recited in the same breath. Hashem said that the words Zachar and Shamar, both remember and to observe, to safeguard, to keep, within the same breath, something that is unfathomable, something that we cannot understand, or certainly not do. We can only say one thing at a time, whereas Hashem spoke the 10 Commandments. That was another layer of the miracles that transpired, that He said both of those two words at the very same time. However, the Ramban looks at this on a more basic level of understanding, and he understands it based on the difference, the way that we see the entire book of Devarim, the entire book of Deuteronomy is written in a different style than the rest of the 4 books of the Torah. So let's look at the Ramban's commentary inside. Do not be challenged by Deuteronomy, where Moses speaks for himself. He uses the words Va'eschanan, I beseeched God. So he's saying that I spoke to God. Or in another place says Va'espalel el Hashem, that I spoke, I prayed to Hashem. For at the beginning of the book of Deuteronomy, it states, these are the words which Moses spoke to all of Israel, meaning that is recording the words as they were said. They were recording the words that Moses spoke to the people. So the first 4 books of the Torah is all written in a way of third person, Vayadaber Hashem el Moshe Lemar, that God spoke to Moses saying as if it's someone else speaking. Whereas in the book of Deuteronomy, the book of Devarim, it's as if Moses himself is speaking. He says that I spoke, I prayed to Hashem, I beseech God, and many of the verses in the Torah, it is written as if Moses is speaking in first person. Our sages teach us that how is it possible for Moses to be speaking in first person if it's God speaking, if it's Hashem speaking? Because this is Hashem's voice coming through the tremendously saintly person that Moses was. It was God's voice speaking through his throat, speaking through his, he was so completely nullified to Hashem, so completely one and unified with Hashem, that Hashem's voice was able to come and speak through him. In other words, the idea of the book of Devarim even though, of course, as the Ramban mentions, is every single word is Hashem's words that he spoke. However, it is certain that the entire Torah, from the beginning of Genesis until the very end, till the very last words in the Torah of Le'inei Kol Yisrael, was told to Moses by God. As Jeremiah states, from his mouth he told me all these words, and I write them on paper with ink. So certainly Moses did not deviate from the words that Hashem spoke to him. The only difference is in the style in which Hashem gave him to speak. Until then, the first 4 books is in the style of Hashem speaking to Moshe as a third person, and here he's speaking in first person of Moshe himself speaking. But this is a way of speaking that Hashem wanted it to be given to the people in a way that they could connect with it a little bit more personal, that Moses himself is speaking to them in first person, and therefore the entire style of the book of Devarim is written a little bit differently than the rest of the 4 books. So based on this foundation that the book of Devarim is a little bit different, you can now understand why the 10 Commandments would be a little bit different as well, based on the style in which it was written, how that Hashem wanted to be elaborated a little bit, or given over to the people in a little bit different. But that still doesn't explain to us these specific differences and what the meaning could be. It just gives us a general framework that it is possible that when Hashem spoke it the first time, when God spoke it the first time, it may have been said in certain words, and then when Moses gave it over to the people the second time, Hashem may have told him to tell it to them in different words because he wanted it to be coming directly from Moses himself. And that was the style in which Hashem wanted it to be given over. Interestingly, if we look at the text of the Kiddush that we say to sanctify the day of Shabbos, the evening Kiddush on Friday nights, here we have the text of the blessing. So we say a number of verses, and then we have the blessing itself for the day of Shabbos. And here in the words of the blessings, "Blessed are you, Lord our God, King of the universe, who has made us holy with his commandments, has desired us and has given us in love and goodwill his holy Shabbat as a heritage, in remembrance of the work of creation." So first, we mention in the bracha and the blessing, we mention Zikaron L'Maseh Bereshis. So this is the remembrance for the work of creation, that he rested on the 7th day. Then we continue in the blessing and we say, the first of the holy festivals, commemorating the exodus from Egypt. Zecher L'Tziat Mitzrayim. We're remembering the exodus of Egypt. For you have chosen us and sanctified us from among all the nations, and with love and goodwill given us your holy Shabbat as a heritage. Blessed are you, Lord, who makes the Shabbat holy. So in our bracha, in our blessing that we say on Kiddush on Friday night, we mention both the reasons for Shabbos. We mention both the reason to commemorate the work of creation, that Hashem rested on the 7th day, as well as commemorating going out of Egypt. So certainly we can already see that both of these 2 reasons are true, and there's elements of both of them, and because of that, the sages that instituted the liturgy for the bracha and the siddur included both of these 2 reasons in what we're blessing Hashem over for the day of Shabbos. So now we can understand the idea that it's a little bit, the words may be a little bit different. There's definitely significance of both of them, but what does this mean to us in our daily lives, and how can we understand better these 2 elements of Shabbos, remembering creation as well as remembering the Exodus from Egypt? Any comments or questions before we continue? So the Rebbe drills down. This was actually a talk given to women at one of the gatherings in, I think it was the early 1970s. The Torah is the foundation for the lives of the Jewish people in all details. It is therefore clear that it contains everything necessary for life. There are 2 general patterns of life. There is the regular natural process of life, where no extraordinary forces are apparent, and there are also extraordinary events in which supernatural forces are apparent and divine providence is revealed. So we have 2 general ways, general methods that Hashem runs the world. One is where we see everything seems to be working by nature. The sun rises every morning, sets in the evening. we wake up in the morning, we're able to breathe and move and see, and we have the cycle of life in the winter, and then the summer, then the spring, things start springing to life, and trees start blossoming again. We have the regular order of things, and then we have a second method, a second track of the way that Hashem runs the world is with supernatural forces, where we see clearly the hand of Hashem in miraculous events. These two patterns of life are referred to in the sources. So in the books of our sages, they're referred to as natural conduct, called in Hebrew Hanhaga Tivis. It's the conduct of nature, of Teva. And then we have a miraculous conduct, the Hanhaga Nisis, the conduct of a nes, of a miracle. So we have the regular order of things, and then we have the supernatural, miraculous events that take place that we see sometimes happening in the world. So if a person is ill and they get scans of all kinds of things going on inside of themselves, and then all of a sudden, a while later, they get checked again, and the illness completely disappeared. Obviously, that's a complete miracle, something that we can't understand, can't explain, and that's a conduct of Hashem in a miraculous way. There is the natural way through which Hashem runs the world in a cyclical form, day after day and year after year, which happens on a regular basis. Then there's the supernatural mode, the miracles God works for those that are worthy of them. While miracles are not a regular daily occurrence, when we contemplate our lives deeply, we can all recognize and feel the miraculous element. We hope that God will continue to steer us with both the natural path and the miraculous path in a positive way, with joy and content. So the Rebbe is pointing out that each and every one of us, we don't have to look very far to find miracles in the world. In fact, if we look and analyze our lives from as early on as we can remember till today, there are certainly things in our lives that need to line up exactly a specific certain way in order for the outcome to be the way it turned out for us. There's certainly aspects in our own lives that we can point to as recognizing clearly the hand of Hashem in those times and places in our lives. And there's other times that we don't recognize it. It's not so noticeable. It's not so recognizable. Part of our job is to look for the hand of Hashem and uncover how even the daily activities that we go about our day-to-day lives and all the things that we're doing on a regular basis that don't seem to be extraordinary, they seem to be regular, to make even those actions special. Recognizing that every day in the morning we wake up, if we're going to work, if we're going to a store, the very fact that we're going shopping and buying food to eat, that itself is a godly act. If we're going to buy food and then use that food to have strength to serve Hashem, or we're buying food and we're sharing it with somebody else, we're inviting guests over, sharing it with others, as well as a mitzvah. So our job is, although on the surface we see that there's two different general patterns, there's a pattern that we see the natural, regular order of things, of how things happen, and then we have what looks to be supernatural, a mode of miraculous mode, a mode of being above and beyond what we're expecting to happen. Both of these two modes are different tracks in the way that Hashem runs the world, and He specifically designed the world to run in such a way. Based on these two dimensions, these two methods of Hashem running the world, He also gave us mitzvahs to amplify these 2 points and to focus on these two unique methods of Hashem's creation and Hashem's running the world. This distinction also exists in the realm of mitzvot. There's one type of mitzvah that focuses on reminding us that nature comes from God and is controlled by Him. There's a second type of mitzvah which focuses on strengthening our belief that God shows miracles when necessary and relates to the Jewish people in a supernatural way. So we have mitzvahs that point to the regular daily activities, the regular daily things that look natural, but they remind us that Hashem's hand is in every single thing that happens in the world. Then we have mitzvahs that are there to focus and remind us that we should never think that we're limited by what seems to be the natural order of things. And there's always something far greater. We can always tap into a far greater and deeper level within Hashem, which is not limited to the way the natural things usually run. There are also mitzvot that contain both elements and point both to God's control of nature as well as reminding us of his supernatural conduct, showing kindness to the Jewish people in a supernatural way. So the mitzvahs that encompass either one or the other, then there are mitzvahs that have both of them are recognizable. The commandment of Shabbat is one of these mitzvot containing a practical lesson regarding both forms of divine conduct. So the mitzvah of Shabbos, we have both elements pointing to the natural order of things, the way that Hashem runs the world in the way that we would expect it to, and then we have a second level of Shabbos, which is reflected in the supernatural, the connection level of Hashem, which is not limited by nature. So now we'll go and drill down a little bit more into the reasons, connect these two levels, tracks of Hashem, modes of Hashem connecting to the world with the mitzvah of Shabbos, and we'll see how what it spoke about in each of the 10 commandments, each set of the 10 commandments, the lesson of keeping Shabbos because to remember that Hashem rested on Shabbos, as well as remembering Shabbos, keeping Shabbos, observing Shabbos, and keeping it holy to remember the exodus of Egypt, are both two elements, two sides of the same coin. The mitzvah of Shabbat is one of the 10 commandments which are stated twice in the Torah. In the first version of the 10 commandments, the Torah explains the reason for the mitzvah of Shabbat. For in 6 days God made the heavens and the earth, but he rested on the seventh day. When we follow Hashem's instructions, and after working for 6 days, we observe the seventh day as a Shabbat for God. We also observe the seventh day of Shabbos as a way of remembering that Hashem rested on the seventh day. This strengthens our faith and understanding that our world is not an independent reality, God forbid, but rather a world created by Hashem over 6 days, followed by a seventh day of rest. Thus, the theme of Shabbat is God's ownership over the natural process. So, in the natural order of things, the way that things happen regularly and when one would expect them to happen, it's much easier to fall into a place to completely ignore that it's Hashem's doing. When we expect something to happen day in, day out, and this is the way things work, then we oftentimes fail to recognize the hand of Hashem that's in that creation and in the systems that run. When we look at how perfectly in sync the human body has to work in order for all of our body parts to function appropriately and be healthy and work in sync with one another in order to function, we recognize that our bodies are the only one that could create such an intrinsic system is Hashem himself. We look at the world and look at the wildlife around us and the whole ecosystems that exist in the world. It's fascinating how everything works. And this entire system we recognize is all created by Hashem himself. So in order to recognize that, we have the day of Shabbos, which reminds us that Hashem created all of these systems that seem to work so well with each other, and that we expect they work so well that we expect them to happen on a regular basis. And if suddenly the sun won't rise one morning, we'll be surprised. Why did something different happen? Because we're so used to that happening. So all these systems being put in place, recognizing that it's Hashem's hand that created all of this, and thanking Hashem for all of the day-to-day activities, all the seemingly simple things that we expect to happen in our lives, and recognizing, thanking Hashem for each and every moment that we have, each and every breath that we take, each and every limb of our bodies that work properly. All of that is included in the recognizing, having a day to recognize that Hashem created all of the natural order of things. However, in the Torah's restatement of the 10 Commandments, a different reason is given for the observance of Shabbat. Remember that you were slaves in Egypt, and that the Lord your God brought you out of there with a mighty hand and an outstretched arm. Therefore, God has commanded you to observe the Shabbos day. Accordingly, Shabbat serves as a reminder for us that God took us out of Egypt with miracles in a supernatural manner, so that we would be free from Pharaoh and all earthly limitations and become eternal servants of God, eternal servants of Hashem. So recognizing that Hashem took us out of Egypt isn't just to remember that we were once slaves and now freed, but more importantly is to remember that it was almost impossible It was virtually impossible for an entire nation under those circumstances to be freed from the mighty and evil Pharaoh and his strong grip that he had on the entire Jewish nation at that time. The fact that Hashem took us out with so many miracles, the miracles of the plagues, the miracle of the killing of the firstborn, the final of the killing of the firstborn of the Egyptians, which was the final plague when Pharaoh finally wanted us to leave Egypt quickly, leaving, the splitting of the sea, all these miracles that transpired up until the giving of the Torah. So when we recognize and observe Shabbos, remembering the exodus of Egypt, it's not just remembering that we were slaves and now we're free. It's remembering how impossible it would have been to become free and all the miraculous events that Hashem broke the rules of nature which he himself set in order to infuse the world with a level of divinity, a level of godliness which is above and beyond what it normally comes into the world. Normally water flows freely and it's impossible to walk through. Hashem makes a miracle and changes that nature of water and makes it completely stand like a wall so all the different tribes can come through. Is obviously converting, taking what used to be water's nature in one way, and now Hashem is showing his hand that all of creation was created by Hashem, and therefore is able to change it when necessary. And any time we experience a miracle in our own lives, in the world, we recognize that it's Hashem reminding us that nature itself was created by Hashem, was created by God, and he's not limited to that nature, and therefore we never give up hope, even if someone is extremely ill. As the sages teach us, even if someone is on the last string of life, we still hope and pray that they should become better and become cured in any given circumstance that seems to be, someone may be in complete, very dire straits, and it seems impossible for them to get out of that situation. That impossibility is only by the rules of nature, but because we are not limited to the natural order of things, we are connected to Hashem, which created the rules of nature and created nature, and we have a connection to that deeper level. And Shabbos is reminding us as well of this deeper level of Hashem that we can tap into and connect to. So on one hand, we have Shabbos reminding us that every single regular day that takes place is also there because Hashem created it. And yet at the same point in time, we recognize that Hashem is not limited to the rules that he created. Because he created them, he can always change them and make them fix and switch them up to help out the people at the time, to help out his chosen nation, his children at the time that is necessary. The miraculous exodus from Egypt and our status as servants of Hashem are commemorated by our abstinence from work on Shabbat and sanctifying the day through positive mitzvot associated with it. Through doing so, we express our knowledge and constant awareness of the critically important fact that God continues to guide the Jewish people in a supernatural manner, just like he did during the Exodus. And this is observed by not doing work on Shabbos and taking ourselves away from the natural order of how we earn a living, and we separate ourselves and connect just to Hashem, and we put ourselves in Hashem's hands. The same same God that gave us what to eat all the rest of the week will continue doing so if we spend a day in observance of Shabbos. Extra time to pray, extra time to learn, extra time to have some spiritual inspiration that we may not have during the rest of the week. And this is all the second level of Shabbat, the second level, recognizing that Hashem did tremendous miracles for us and took us out of Egypt in order to be subservient only to him and not to any others. So we have, on the one hand, Shabbat needs to underline the understanding that the natural process of the world is in fact an act of God, who is constantly creating and sustaining the universe and all it contains. And on the other hand, Shabbat needs to underline the constant awareness that it wasn't only during the Exodus that God displayed miracles, but that now we are slaves to our surroundings and subject to earthly laws, like the other nations of the world. This is what a person may think, that it was good for them. Then there were tremendous miracles, but now we're bound by the surroundings that we're in, we're bound by the environment that we're in, and it's too difficult to connect to Hashem on a deeper level. Therefore, the second aspect of Shabbat is we must remember that when God took us out of Egypt, he said, they are my servants, not servants to other servants. We're not servants to other surroundings. We are servants to God alone, and are not subject at all to others that are themselves servants, or other instances, other environments that were created by Hashem. Shabbat is intended to serve as a reminder and a guidepost in our lives that when we encounter a conflict between worldly conventions and Hashem's commands, as recorded in the Code of Jewish Law, we remember that we are God's servants. We are only subject to God's control, and He always relates to us in a supernatural manner. Oftentimes we may be stuck in making a decision of do I behave according to the environment that I'm in, the surrounding that I'm in, what people around me may expect me to do, and then we remember that in this case Hashem wants me to do something a little bit different. Now it's time to Shabbos. Maybe running late, working late on Friday, and we recognize Shabbos is coming soon. And sometimes it may be difficult to put everything aside. And this is what Hashem tells us, that when we have the surrounding, when we have our environments, we have our workplaces, we have the friends and workers, all different types of people that we interact with, and yet at the same time we recognize that we are connected to a force far deeper and greater than everyone around us, than the environment around us, than every place around us. And no matter come what may, our guiding factor is, what does the Code of Jewish Law say? What does Shulchan Aruch say? What does Hashem want from me at this given time? And Shabbos is a reminder that as much as we may convince ourselves that we're limited and constrained by external constraints and surroundings and environments and impact of those around us, remember that the only one that we really need to answer to is Hashem himself, and therefore we connect just as Hashem acted with us, taking us out of Egypt and performed tremendous miracles out of the ordinary, out of the realm of nature. The same thing too, we behave towards Hashem, fulfill the commandments and mitzvahs that Hashem tells us, even when logically they may seem difficult and not beneficial. We still fulfill that which Hashem teaches us, and with that, hopefully Hashem reciprocates and helps us out as well in a supernatural manner. When we have this mindset, then Shabbat will certainly be restful. It will be a source of blessing for the entire week. So through observing Shabbat properly, the entire week is infused with holiness and blessing. So we have this mindset. It comes Shabbos, we don't have to worry about anything else. Today is a day of rest. Today everything is taken care of. On Shabbat, we focus on any challenge that may be. On Shabbat, we look at it as if it's already taken care of. We're in good hands. After Shabbos, you have to worry about it again. We'll deal with it then. But at this point, it comes one day a week. We recognize Hashem created all of the world. Hashem's hand is in nature. And Hashem wants us as well to recognize the miracles. We're not limited to nature. We're not limited to being slaves to our surroundings and environment. We connect to Hashem at a deeper level, and that creates a peaceful, holy, and inspirational Shabbos. Together with that, from the day of Shabbat, as the Zohar tells us, Minei Misbarchen Kol Hu Yomen, from the day of Shabbat, it blesses the entire day of the week. And this is the day that, although on one hand we prepare getting ready for Shabbos, we have to prepare beforehand so that we can enjoy Shabbos appropriately. Together with that, once we do that, we have the outcome at the end that not only is Shabbat itself a peaceful and restful and happy day, but that infuses our entire coming week as well to be infused with holiness and blessing, and recognize that we're not limited to what seems to be the expected scenarios which will transpire. How do we bring this into our own homes and own lives? We see this in the lighting of Shabbat candles. As discussed in the past, the preparations for Shabbat begin before the day arrives. If we want to have food for Shabbos, we have to prepare beforehand. We want to have clean clothes for Shabbos, we have to, for Shabbat, have something nice to wear on Shabbat, we have to prepare beforehand. A few minutes before the arrival of Shabbat, we need to light Shabbat candles and bring light into the still mundane world. And that's on this light, we pronounce the blessing. He sanctified us with his commandments and commanded us to light the holy Shabbat candle. And this is one of the reasons why, as we mentioned before, we add in to the day of Shabbat to make it holy. So the day of Shabbos itself begins at sunset, but yet widespread Jewish custom around the world is to light the Shabbos candles 18 minutes before sunset. Some do it even earlier, but at the very minimum, at least a few minutes before sunset, we should add in some time so that we're making that time of the week, which it would be part of Friday, which just would be a simple weekday. And when we light Shabbat candles earlier, we're bringing in the holiness of Shabbat, transforming those moments which, without our help, they would be regular minutes, regular weekday, and we have the ability through lighting Shabbos candles and bringing in the day a few moments earlier, we transform those mundane minutes and parts of the day into Holy Shabbos. The Shabbat candles illuminate our homes and provide light for the entire week to follow. And from our homes, this light needs to spread to our surrounding environment. The Shabbat candles must be kindled before Shabbat begins, while the world is still in a mundane state. This act expresses the concept of Shabbat, that through God's mitzvah, we have the ability to transform a dark and troubled home to a bright and holy place filled with physical and spiritual happiness. The ruling of the Code of Jewish Law, based on the Mishnah and the Talmud, is that this mitzvah is entrusted primarily to women. It is the role and privilege of Jewish women to welcome the light and holiness of Shabbat and to infuse the rest of the week with this light, as women are the mainstays of the home, the ones that bring light bring the atmosphere into the home, is primarily entrusted to women, whereas if there is no woman in the home, if a man is by themselves, then they would have the obligation as well to light Shabbat candles, because we still have to have this light brought into the home regardless, but it's primarily given to women. Now, the very first one that lit Shabbat candles, the first of the Jewish matriarchs, Sarah Imenu, the Medrash tells us that as long as Sarah lived, her candle burned from one Friday to the next. When she passed away, the candle ceased to burn, and when Rivka came, it returned. So it was a miracle. She would light her candle on Friday night, and her candles, literally, the physical candle lit and remained burning an entire week, even though there was only enough fuel in it to last a few hours or the day itself, but it continued to burn an entire week. We all know the story of Hanukkah, where the candles were supposed to, there was only enough oil to last for one night, and it lasted for the whole Hanukkah. But Sarah Imenu, our matriarch Sarah, had this miracle happening every single week with her Shabbat candles, because she was such a holy person, such a unified person with Hashem, that this idea of bringing the supernatural into the natural, into nature of the world, and the idea of Shabbos then blessing an entire week, is something that was manifest in the physical realm in her tent. This is also the lesson that we can derive from the Medrash about Sarah, our first matriarch. When Sarah kindled her Shabbat candle on Friday, it burned all week until the next Friday, despite the fact that its oil was only enough for a few hours. This was possible due to Sarah's great righteousness and good deeds. Every Jewish woman is a daughter of our matriarchs Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, and Leah. This means that every Jewish woman has inherited this supernatural power that through lighting Shabbat candles with a blessing, the light and warmth of Shabbat will not only be present over the course of Shabbat, but it will also infuse the entire week until next Friday night, when the candles will be kindled again with additional holiness, light, and warmth. So of course our Shabbos candles don't have the physical power to last all week, but the spiritual power certainly continues to last all week, and it has enough warmth and blessing and energy that keeps us going all week long until we're running to light Shabbat candles the following week. As mentioned above, Shabbat observance illuminates our home and life in both of these two ways, our regular natural lives and also our extraordinary events. In both of these regards, we are guided and protected by Hashem, the guardian of Israel. When we all transform our homes into a sanctuary for God, a home in which the weekdays are also infused with the holiness of Shabbat and the festivals, then God will grant us constant protection. We will then be led to the bright day of the true and complete redemption by Mashiach speedily in our time. This is one of the beautiful lessons that we can learn from the fact that Hashem told us the recorded the Torah, the Ten Commandments, giving us two different reasons. Remembering the days of the creation and Hashem resting on the seventh day, as well as remembering the exodus from Egypt, which was connected with many miraculous events, and binding us to Hashem Himself throughout all of the challenges that they went through. So by us as well today, keeping Shabbos and observing Shabbos, we bring into our homes extra light, extra energy, extra divine inspiration, extra protection, that hopefully Hashem will protect us all, keep us all safe and secure, and all together with the coming of Mashiach, we'll have complete safety and security in the world and complete divinity present. We'll be able to only experience godliness and holiness.